Oh, I thought we were going to run the video. Good morning. It's February 18th, 2022. Welcome to Triggered. I'm Cory Morgan. What a crazy day. Well, we saw it coming. Ottawa, the protesters there, they are, the police are moving in on them and getting ready to, or starting to arrest them and move them out of there. We've got some footage of that as it began, which we'll play momentarily here and frame the show up. Do not, let it be, back it up, let them see, no, disgrace, no right, So yeah, that frames up what we'll be covering today. We'll be cutting in. We're talking to some people on the ground, hopefully get some live updates from right out there. We're watching the streams. We'll be bringing in information as it happens. It's a pretty crazy scene, though thankfully so far remarkably peaceful, all things considered, when you've got a police action against this many people out there right now. So as a reminder, the show is going to be live 11:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, Monday to Friday, except for this Monday. Unless news gets really big, it is family day, so we won't be going. Comments are welcome. Keep them civil and keep them polite, though, please, especially in heated times like right now. We want to be interactive, but we're in crazy times. We've got to be good to each other. I'm going to be talking later with the interim leader of the Maverick Party, Jay Hill, as they've come right out and said it's time for Western independence. They've kind of walked back and forth on that line a little bit, so it'll be interesting to see where they're landing on it. And the leader of the Canadian Independence Party, Jacques, you don't hear a lot about him, or the Libertarian Party of Canada, but they are there. They've been there a long time. They're actually one of Canada's older parties, and they've been around and talk about a time when liberty has been challenged. There's a gentleman named Cameron James I'm hoping we'll pull in. He's in Ottawa on the ground, and if he comes in, we'll pull him into the interview while we can. I'm just going to start with my thoughts for the day. They're going to be short, and we'll get to Dave because there's just so much news to cover right now, and it's so important at a time like this. So, what I want to go on about is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has lost control of the nation. And as I'm speaking, hundreds of police members are marching upon peaceful demonstrators in Ottawa. We're seeing video of heavy-duty tow trucks heading towards Parliament Hill with police escorts bringing them in. I'm wondering if they were commandeered through force with Trudeau's invocation of the rebranded War Measures Act. Meanwhile, though, we've had eco-terrorists in BC, and they've chosen to violently attack a work site on the Coastal GasLink pipeline project. Millions of dollars in damage were done, as up to 20 eco-terrorists wielding axes threatened security in order to take over and damage heavy equipment on the site. They dropped trees on the roads, lit fires, and set traps in order to hinder any response from the police forces. When the police did try to respond, they were attacked with smoke bombs, and one member was injured. We're lucky that this eco-terrorist attack didn't actually kill somebody. Legacy media has reported on it, but it's hardly made the headlines with them. An eco-terrorism act like this should be making waves across the country, and it's hardly made a ripple. What emboldened these terrorist acts so violently and right now? Is it the complete breakdown and lack of respect for the government? I say it is. In drawing police resources from across the country to try and evict peaceful protesters in Ottawa, Trudeau's left the other regions underserved by police, and they're vulnerable to extremists. And in ignoring the escalating actions of extremists at that site for years, or at least treating the extremists with kid gloves, the government has invited these activists to up the ante and increase violence. They have no respect for authorities or Canada as a whole. We look forward to further extreme actions across the nation as extremists realize just how weak the leadership of this country is. Trudeau is paralyzed with a mix of panic and vanity. He won't back down or even negotiate with citizens while support for his government crumbles across the nation. Parliament has been shut down despite being able to operate remotely for years due to the pandemic. The real reason Parliament's been shut down is the Trudeau regime doesn't want to have to try and answer questions on their actions. They're too weak to defend their move to invoke a form of martial law upon Canadians. Rather than trying to lead, they have suspended civil rights and then tossed the job onto the police and fled. They're cowering and hoping the problem resolves itself. Trudeau tweeted 3 times since the police action began in Ottawa. You know what he tweeted about? The Olympics. Remember, there's Olympics happening somewhere. Otherwise, he's nowhere to be seen. Not only has Trudeau failed to manage this crisis well, he's directly responsible for causing it. His provocative speech, his insults, his disrespect for a protest that supported by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Canadians, has inflamed a situation beyond control, and it never had to happen. Whatever may happen this weekend, there's only one thing we can safely conclude. Justin Trudeau has lost control of the country. He's done irreparable damage to national unity, and he will go down in history as one of, if not, the most inept and destructive prime minister in Canadian history. And it all could have been avoided with good leadership. We're going to see none of that, though, until we have new leadership. Till then, Canada is broken. Now, let's bring our news editor, Dave Naylor, who is just listening to 100 feeds and typing and phoning and doing everything he can to watch this madness as it unfolds in Ottawa. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing okay, Cory. I'm glad the Prime Minister is enjoying the Olympics.
Yeah, you know, it's important to, you can tell that's what the nation really wants to hear about right now. They're not concerned about the, massive Tiananmen Square-like undertaking in Ottawa right now.
No, really stunning scenes from Ottawa this morning, Cory, which I would suggest are unprecedented in Canadian history. It started with hundreds of police marching 2 by 2 towards the demonstrators. The police line went on as far as the eye could see. They finally came face to face, and basically pushing and shoving emerged. People were arrested, people were taken to the ground, other people just lay on the ground and were carried away by the officers. They were backed up by other officers in complete camouflage gear with automatic weapons. Police or paramedics were in the line ready to treat injured people. One of the disturbing things this morning, though, Cory, was the use of children. Ottawa police said that the protesters had placed children in harm's way between the police and the protesters. And TV footage, you could clearly see children right at the front line. Some of them have been removed and taken to a place of safety. There's basically an ongoing standoff now. Police move forward a couple feet at a time. Protesters back up and consolidate. You can hear their horns blaring. They're singing "Oh Canada." Really dramatic scenes. Police with automatic weapons are using the butts of their guns to smash into vehicles, including like mobile homes and trailers. Protesters are shouting, "Hold the line, hold the line." Pat King, one of the main organizers, has been arrested. And interestingly, there appears to be a concerted campaign to flood the city's 911 system with fake calls, which is screwing up the plans. So, dramatic scene there, all being completely ignored by the Prime Minister as he watches the Olympics. The other big story you mentioned, Cory, was that horrible attack on the Coastal Link pipelines. Our Reed Small, who had the story up almost first yesterday, is on the job again today. He's collecting all sorts of reaction from politicians and the company and RCMP. So we'll have a good follow up to that shortly. My favorite story of the day is actually out of Red Deer, and it's about a quite ugly dog. His name is Brody, and he's so ugly he's cute. He's got facial deformities where his eyes look in one way and his tongue is hanging out the side of his mouth. Well, anyways, he's become an internet star with literally tens of thousands of followers. And what somebody spotted, basically, his doggy doppelganger, down in Texas. So they've arranged for the dogs to be reunited, and they can spend the rest of their days staring at each other, wondering how did we get this so ugly. So that's just a fun story to take everybody's mind off things. That's up there now. Columnist Dave Makachuk says the last few days has made us question whether we should stay in the country or not. Lots of news breaking, Cory. We'll keep on top of it if need be. If things get completely out of control, I'll fill you in, and I'll be happy to bring our viewers up to date.
Great. Well, thank you, Dave. I know you're very busy in there, and I appreciate that. We'll check in with you again if anything breaks, and I'll let you back to it.
Thanks, Cory.
All right, so there's that reminder, go to the westernstandardonline.com to see these stories as they come out. Reed Small was breaking stuff last night. As Dave said, we were the first on the news scene, I guess you could say, to point out that, holy cow, we've had a massive eco-terrorist action happening in northern British Columbia right now. Dave's writing on things as they break, and there's more there. There are things, as Dave said, we'll put some stories on just, we do need a break from all of the angry and violent stuff going on. So even stories about things like a cutely ugly dog. As a person who's owned and owns bulldogs, hey, I understand how sometimes the uglier a dog is, the cuter it can be in some ways. So be sure to go online and watch that. And I'm watching it as it unfolds. I've got that CBC stream, and we'll pull that up as we go, because as taxpayers, we get to pay for all that content anyways. So we will be sharing that with you and watching. As you can see there, as Nico's brought up, this is live. Protesters are sort of standing down police. It's, again, remarkably peaceful, though, when you consider this many. Usually when you see an action like this, we see tear gas, we see people being tackled and hit with truncheons, or we see people throwing things at police. And this is the calmest large protest enforcement, I guess you could say, I've ever seen in my life. Again, it gets to the root of just how peaceful these protesters are and were, though. I mean, this is not a crazy thing. It does not justify Trudeau's invocation of the Emergencies Act, that this stepping on our civil rights. This, if, it's questionable, we can go on whether police should have acted or not at all. But the bottom line is they had the ability, they had the laws, they didn't need to invoke that act. And I think that's why he's hiding from Parliament right now. And yes, I saw some of that in a couple of spots too. And for the vast majority, I even heard a CBC reporter talk about it. There are very, very few children there, but there were some, and they were seen on TV. Just be responsible, parents, guys. I know it's not fair. I know you've been peaceful. I know it's been peaceful all the way up to date, but get the kids out of there. We don't know what's going to happen now. People could stampede. As somebody, Kim is messaging, or commenting there, tear gas is coming. Cops have masks on. I saw other reports that, there are snipers up in the buildings in case things go terribly wrong. I think some of them are also just observers because they can report down to police on what's going on. Get the kids out, though. Get them out of there. There were even people talking about, the Ottawa police were talking about how they're going to seize dogs if they see them out there. Same thing. I like dogs. If you're an adult and you want to go and stand in the protest, push back, hold your ground, perhaps be arrested, of course, that's your right. That's what this is all about. But yeah, there's some footage there of a kid, just get the kids out. It could be a dangerous circumstance. It's time for them to go. It's just not the place to be. We can go into this afterwards. As somebody said, Canada's not a safe place to live. It is unfortunate that it's not safe down there at that protest right now. And it's not safe for kids. It's not responsible to have those children down there. Take them out. And as the police have said, child protective authorities will take those kids if they come in and spot them there. So let's just save that whole horrible thing. You can still protest. You can do all sorts of things. And I am honestly thrilled with how they've been standing up for themselves and what's going on there. And, let's keep it peaceful, but get the kids out of there, guys. It's if anything, it's just giving them more excuses to move in, because they'll claim that children are being endangered. And to be totally bluntly honest, if you're at that now, when you've got a police movement coming in on you and you have little children with you, you are endangering your kids. Please don't do that. Take them out of there. Find somebody else to watch them and then come back to the protest, or do whatever you have to, but it's just not the place for them now. And again, the vast majority of people don't have them there. That's worth noting. As I said, even a CBC, our state broadcaster, commenter was saying very few, but even a few kids are too many, because this so far has been remarkably peaceful. And let's keep it that way. I don't want to be reporting on injuries as we saw this moving, and we keep bringing this live footage up and showing. I mean, it's a standoff, and it's going slowly. The police keep kind of slowly moving in. They're doing what's called kettling, and that means, and I've been to protests where they do that before, they don't have enough forces to catch and arrest or stop everybody. So what they do is sort of move around, and you take a chunk of the protesters and you cut them all off from all the rest of them. And then you can grab them, arrest them, cart them out of there, and then move in. It's like the old saying, how do you take down an elephant? How do you eat an elephant? You do it one bite at a time. And that's what the police are doing now. But they got a heck of a task ahead of them, because there is a massive amount of protesters there. These resources are limited. And the weekend is coming, and more people are coming out there to support the protesters. So we'll see if they manage to reduce the numbers down there quickly enough, peacefully enough, to be able to actually stop this this protest, or manage to shut it down. I mean, these people are very determined. They don't want to leave. We're watching unfortunate history being made right now. We really are. We're seeing Canadian civil rights being stepped on in a way we've never seen in our adult lives, most of us at least. Anyways, you know, again, the last time an act like this was invoked was 1950, or 1970. I was about to say, because I'm 50, and I'm not old enough to have lived when this happened last time. And it just doesn't merit it, as we see now. I mean, I'm sure the CBC, CTV, if they could find evidence of protesters being violent, being out of control, trying to justify their narrative of this movement, of this pushback against restrictions being wrong, they would happily cover it. But they aren't finding it. They aren't seeing it, because these are reasonable people who have been just standing up for themselves and their rights. Like I said, my only other concern is the people have chosen to keep their children down there at this time. Come on, guys, get out now. It's wrong. The police shouldn't move in. They shouldn't tear gas you, but they probably will, and your kids might get it. Somebody else putting out, yes, the logo is CBC on there. Guys, we don't have, at this point, somebody on the ground. We might pull somebody in later on, but we do have live footage from there, which is important. We want to see what's happening. And if it's coming from the state broadcaster, that means we've already paid for that footage as taxpayers, so we are going to use it. And as you can see, though, there's no sound, so you don't have to listen to Rosie Barton and those goofy talking heads from the state broadcaster there. We'll talk about it, but you'll get the footage from there. And if we get the direct feed from Cameron and some of the others who are on the ground out there in Ottawa, we will cut in on it. So I'm going to speak quickly about one of our sponsors, and then I'm going to bring Jacques Boudreau in. He's the leader of the Libertarian Party of Canada. And that sponsor, and that's how we can keep going, because the CBC, of course, gets $1.5 billion tax dollars a year. We rely on sponsors and members to our website and subscribers, and that's Bitcoinwell.com. These guys talk about a time when you want to get your money away from the state, take away their ability to take it. And they're targeting Canadians' money. They want to steal it. They can get into our banks. They're showing that. They're seizing accounts. They're going after them. But as much as they want to get after digital currencies, they can't get your wallet, guys. They can't get your digital wallet. If you got things in a digital form, it's out of their reach. So how do you get into it, though? I mean, it's a new thing. A lot of people aren't so familiar with it. Well, Bitcoinwell is a Canadian company, a Western Canadian company. They have one-on-one personalized service. They will help you find out about it, learn if it's right for you, set up your wallet, learn how to deposit into it, learn how to transfer it. Check these guys out. This is a time when it's more important than ever to distance yourself from the state and their control of you. Bitcoinwell.com. Check them out. They're a great sponsor, and it's a great service. Okay, let's bring Jacques in here. And it's been a while. I talked to Jacques back in the election there a while back. And, well, we're into some times when liberty is more challenged than ever. So thanks for joining me today, Jacques.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Libertarian Party of Canada, and I mentioned that a bit in the earlier part of the show, like it's one of the oldest federal parties in Canada. It actually has a very long history. You know, it's never been a big contender at any point in the House of Commons, but they've always been there. They've always run campaigns. They've always kept liberty as their main focus. And people often kind of forget that you're there sometimes, which at a time like right now, liberty, again, is more threatened than we've ever seen.
Well, I hate to, in a way, play politics with all this, but the silver lining is that people are coming to us. I got an email the other day from someone telling me that, like many Canadians, he was jumping back and forth between the Liberals and the Conservatives in terms of support, and he said, "I'm done. I am now a Libertarian." So we'll see what happens.
Well, yeah, I mean, if people are examining the reach and scope of government in ways that they've never really looked at before. I mean, this is sort of, the Libertarians have always been the canary in the coal mine and trying to tell people, you know, we're at risk of losing some of our individual rights and our freedoms right now, and we've got to speak up or it could be taken. Well, now they're being taken, and people are realizing that, wow, the Libertarian Party was right all along.
Well, precisely. You know, I mean, we've been warning people about this, and, you know, let's face it, there are a lot of people who don't like to hear me or other freedom-loving people who say that We are not as free as we used to be. I mean, when the average household in Canada pays something like, I think it's 42% last time I looked, of their income in taxes, and I'm talking all income, all taxes, income and what.
I'm so sorry. I've got to break in on you really quickly, as I warned kind of earlier. We've got a guy on the ground in Ottawa. We're going to come back to you.
Okay.
And hold that thought. We'll pull you back in. I don't want to. I feel so terribly rude, but it's very important to stay live as this breaks.
Understand.
All right, thank you. So we're going to pull Cameron James in. He's from Indie News Now. He's on the ground in Ottawa. Hi, Cameron. How's it going out there?
It's pretty good. We just got in. The police didn't give us much in the way of scuff or guff or anything. They just said it would be difficult to park. Wasn't too bad. So we're here just coming on to Wellington. Apparently they've got the riot gear cops out with the helmets and the tear gas. We were seeing them on one of our buddies' live streams.
Snacks, though. It's awesome.
Down in the main sort of area by the hill, there's all sorts of people just standing, and the spirits seem good. There's definitely not like a huge tension. There's not a whole lot of aggression. The protesters are all peaceful still, and I think the police are just looking to arrest unruly people is what we've sort of got right now. They arrested a couple live streamers, which isn't exactly journalism, but is kind of sort of against the threshold of it. Zod on YouTube, and then Malcolm has a stream on TikTok that he got busted as well. So you guys see here, the trucks are still undisturbed. Spark Street was empty, and there's a number of people down here on the hill standing around. We walked past some truckers who were discussing logistics, and they didn't want to share any of that, understandably so. They've been pretty tight about that as well. So we're just making our way down. We're right outside the Parliament. But so far, everything looks pretty good. It might just be sort of a photo op so that they can show that they're doing something is a bit of the vibe we're getting.
Something that's interesting, I mean, I would have thought, and maybe it's just due to the lack of resources, they would have stopped anybody more from coming in because they would fear more protesters coming to bolster the numbers. But you had no hindrance getting in there. I mean, you identified as media, I imagine, but still, you would think they'd be trying to kind of cork the bottle right now.
Yeah, we've heard stories about them kind of blocking off media, but people on foot are still able to. So someone suggested we park and then walk, and we were able to get pretty close. We were on Elgin, I think, and we were able to walk in pretty easily. So not huge disruption there. People can still walk in, but they're stopping vehicles mostly from coming in.
Okay. And it's good to see. I mean, you're reporting more of what we've been seeing so far. I mean, it's been peaceful. As you said, that they're not moving in that much in force. They started by arresting a few folks, but now it seems to be just more of kind of standing and staring at each other for the time being.
Yeah, even the arrests that went down with Tamara Litch and Chris Barber. They also arrested one of the main guys who was sitting in the middle, Black Buffalo. He had his car in the middle there. And I don't know exactly what went on. We've got a clip of the arrest, but they sort of picked him up and hauled him off. And aside from that, they haven't really been arresting anyone outside of, outside of, some of the homeless people who are having some mental health problems. So it's not terrible. They're not just arresting everyone. They've got the equipment out, and it might just be a show or a flex.
Yeah.
So we're going to go over and see how close we can get to all of that.
Great. Well, if you're a few minutes away, maybe I'll let you carry on walking. Can you come back and check in with us in a little bit here again while you're out there? And
I'll stick here in the backstage, and just give me a shout when you're ready.
Sure. Yeah, and just give a wave if anything worth comes out. And plus, you're with Indie News Now, just to remind people, and you've been doing a documentary on this, right?
Yeah, we started off doing a documentary. We wanted to kind of get all the sides, the citizens here who are upset. We've interviewed some of them, and lots of different, the amount of different people here and the diversity is pretty incredible. So we were trying to get all the perspectives and all the little stories. So we were doing a documentary, and then we decided we should get out some live media for people as well, because there's a lot of value there. We're right here in the hill in the middle, and they still got the stage up. and there's maybe about 100 people there.
Great. Well, I'll let you get settled in and see what you can, and I'll pull you back into the feed. I really appreciate this. We need to know from out west what's happening out there. And,
Thank you very much. See you soon.
We'll talk soon again, Cameron. Okay, let's bring Jacques back in there after I've so rudely interrupted, but that's the nature of being a live news stream. Of course, we take things as they break, and having Cameron on the ground out there was really important. So sorry again about that, Jacques. You were talking about, again, our incremental loss of liberty right now.
Yeah, just to finish my point. And last time I looked, the typical Canadian household spends 42% of their income in all forms of taxation. So that's income tax, sales tax, land transfer tax, et cetera, et cetera. It used to be 33% in the 1960s. So I'm just, putting that out, that the less money you get to keep, the less free you are. But there's all kinds of other elements as well, regulations, all kinds of demands, all kinds of things that make it more difficult to start a business. The list goes on. And we've been warning about this, as you pointed out, for decades. I think people are finally understanding where we're coming from.
So, I imagine it's a safe leap to believe that the Libertarian Party of Canada is not supporting the invocation of the Emergency Measures Act to crack down on people demonstrating at this time.
No, we don't. In fact, I'm livid. Many of my party members are livid as well. In fact, we just sent out this morning a joint letter co-written with my colleagues at the BC Libertarian Party and the Ontario Libertarian Party, condemning that and a couple of other things as well.
Yeah. So did you guys run candidates in the last election last fall? I believe you had some, didn't you?
Yeah, unfortunately, we only have 13, which that's one of the things that I want to do. I want to have a lot more candidates, because we are not a think tank. We are a political party. So we exist to give people a voice. And I heard from way too many people, via email and other means, to say that they got into the booth wanting to vote for the Libertarian candidate and couldn't find one. That is, it's simply not acceptable. So again, we want to give people a voice, and that's one of the things I'm working on right now.
Yeah, well, there is a need and a demand for it. I ran for the Libertarian Party back in, I believe it was 2015 election. And I was under no illusions at that time. I wasn't going to unseat the incumbent or anything like that. But a lot of people, when I went to the doors, were happy. Say, oh, I have got that option. I have it there. At least I could attend some forums, and I put questions to the incumbent that he didn't want to answer. I talked about supply management and things like that. I just like to stress that importance to people, that just because a party is smaller or up and coming doesn't mean they're not worth supporting. That it's important to have these parties out there getting that perspective.
Well, absolutely. And, one of the things I stress to people when I try to get them to run is that being able to participate in debates alone is a step forward, because I certainly find myself putting forward viewpoints that most people have never heard of before. But quite often, the reaction is a positive one.
Yeah, so the People's Party of Canada sort of captured a degree of the libertarian-minded people in the last election, and they're still kind of out there. Have you guys had much communication with them, or are you just kind of staying distinctly apart from them right now?
Early on, when Max left the Conservatives, there was certainly a lot of talk about possibly doing something. This was before he created BPC. Max has read all the right libertarian literature. He often quotes Hayek, for example, which is good. But in the end, he's simply not a libertarian. I would prefer to see a PPC government than all the alternatives, except for ourselves, of course. But he doesn't. I think he still likes fairly large governments. We have a lot in common. The supply management is something that he wants to dismantle. So do we. But again, from my perspective, he simply does not go far enough.
Okay, well, and that's one thing with the Libertarian Party, is always stay pretty pure and true to the roots, anyways, of the the philosophy of liberty and libertarianism in general. I mean, a lot of people divide. There's left libertarian, right libertarian. It's been one of the challenges, though, is kind of herding cats and getting people to come together and agree on what enough liberty-minded view is to stay in one room. I know that was a challenge for Tim before you, and I'm certain it still is for you right now. How's that been going in kind of gaining a unity of movement?
You know, I haven't found, I mean, I know that it exists. I mean, I follow what goes on in the US, and I know that there's left libertarians and right libertarians and the like. So I know it's a fact of life, but I have not, in the few months that I've been leader, it has not been at the forefront. I mean, certainly at the board, we all seem to be like-minded. So hopefully it's a positive sign. You know, we shall see. You know, the interesting thing about libertarianism is being about freedom, and I'm convinced of this, is that we cannot lose the moral battle associated with freedom, because when you give people freedom, they can then decide to set themselves up in whatever manner they choose. Like I think, for example, you know, in the UK in the late 1800s, there were all kinds of organizations. I mean, they were called mutual aid societies, where a neighborhood, people would get together, of their own volition, right? None of this was through coercion, would give a small contribution on a monthly basis to a bunch of people that they elected to manage these funds. And you know, one of the things they did was to go and help members of the community who were under duress. I mean, another misconception of libertarianism is that, you know, it's all dog eat dog and look after yourself type thing, but it's not true. We believe in charity and helping each other as much as the next people, but we just don't believe that it can be accomplished through coercive methods. So when you can choose to, you know, belong to whatever group that you want, it's a far better one than being compelled at gunpoint to turn your money over for, you know, quite often all kinds of things that have nothing to do with helping other people.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of people are libertarians. They just don't know it yet, actually. And if they'd look out, they'd realize that there's somebody who represents them. So we got to get back to our breaking coverage on things. But how will people track down the Libertarian Party and learn more about it and you know, get involved?
Well, libertarian.ca is their website. There are links there to donate, to, I mean, they can certainly reach out to me if they would like to volunteer. This is something else I'm trying to ramp up significantly, is to get more volunteers, because we are a small party. We don't have a lot of funds, so we depend very much on volunteers to get things done. And if people want to run, I mean, if they heard my message today in terms of, you know, there's all kinds of stuff that they don't really have to do. If they want to be a paper candidate at this point, we will take it. Right, so it's simply meeting Election Canada's minimum standards in order to be able to run, and then they can let their name stand.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining me on this crazy busy news day, Jacques. At libertarian.ca, it's very important to keep standing up for our liberties, and I hope we can have a more extended conversation in the future when we're not quite as pressed up on such breaking news.
Okay, thank you again.
Great. Thanks again, Jacques. So yes, libertarian.ca, they'll stand up for you. So let's bring Cameron back in. He's been walking around. I can see the frost coming from his mouth. It looks pretty chilly out there. How are things looking? You're in the middle of the protest now.
Yeah, we're here near Sussex and Wellington, and they've got, as you can see here, a number of the police in the riot gear. They've got the tear gas at the ready. They're looking pretty calm. Everyone's pretty calm all together. So that's pretty good. There's another line down the way that I don't think they're going to let us get to. They're holding the line pretty hard here. And everyone's spirits still seem pretty good. I don't think people are intimidated. And all of the officers, we're giving them nods and saying hi, and they're giving nods and saying hi back. So, obviously respect our police officers. So,
yeah, well, it's always good not to see violence. This has just been so striking throughout this. I noticed, I could see you in the background. Folks were hugging you. The atmosphere in general with this and other protests I went to even out here, it's just, I've never been to protests that have been so congenial before.
yeah, and a lot of the old protest veterans we've been talking to say this is peaceful, polite protests they've ever been to. And on top of that, you guys were talking about sort of a libertarian movement, and there being sort of people all over the place. One of the things that's here is a sense of unity without uniformity, and a sense of valuing freedom and liberty, and wanting to bridge the political divides that have been sort of fueled by the mainstream media and kind of created this situation, is what a lot of people say. So there is a lot of unity there, and perhaps the Libertarian Front might see unity come out of this as well.
Yeah, and this has been a very decentralized sort of thing, I mean, the police did what they typically would in a protest and arrested organizers, but I don't think it's had that much impact because this was never really a well-organized, centrally run sort of thing. You've just taken the people you see the most out, but it's individuals who are making their choices on this for the most part.
Yeah, definitely, and I can't speak to how diverse and decentralized it's been in terms of everyone showing up and saying what do you need help with, and people just jump on whatever needs to be done, helping out the homeless, making sure everyone's warm and looked after. So in terms of it being decentralized, I think that's one of the strongest points of this protest, and the media is trying to make it out like these leaders are centralized forces, and there's so many branches that that's obviously not true.
Yeah, well, I'm seeing some commenters discussion. It sounds like some groups might be considering, or individuals, they talking about leaving the protest and think they've done enough. Others are digging their heels in. Like, is your atmosphere in general, does it look like the people still plan on being there to stay at this point?
Not only is the general sentiment, and we saw them sort of strategizing, so we won't speak to what we saw there. The general sentiment among all truckers so far is that they want to hold the line. The protesters that are here say that they want to be here for freedom, for the kids, for the future, for our vets, freedom in general. And I know personally we've heard from a lot of people who are still saying they're going to be coming down in the near future, today and tomorrow.
You got some people here?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm wondering is, I think, I would have thought when the police moved, they would have moved a little faster and harder almost. I'm glad they haven't. But you'd think they'd almost want to do a move to try and clear out the whole protest before the weekend hits, because I got a feeling a whole lot more people might be showing up to support now, and this might outdo their resources.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the police, they don't want, it's peaceful protesters, so they don't really want to engage, and they don't have any real valid reason to engage. And the police presence in the evening has been minimal, and they've been sort of hanging back and not involved in much other than any slight disturbances. So I think that a lot of this has to do with sort of showing that they're doing something because they're getting a lot of pressure and they just needed the photo op. A lot of the police sort of situations that we encountered, and we actually had a video on it, seemed to be sort of staged photo op type things where they just got out and were doing, trying to show that they had the situation under control. I mean, the situation is under control. So, in that regard, they try to hype it up and say it's violent and there's all these people. Most of the violence we've seen has been towards the truckers, slash tires, aggression from counter protesters. There was even a group of counter protesters that managed somehow to intercept. And we're doing a video on this today. They managed to intercept a convoy coming from Cornwall, and it was a private group. So they were wondering how they got that information, how 200 counter-protesters were able to be there with the mainstream media and the police at the ready. It was kind of strange. So it seems like that's maybe more of their tactic, is just sort of showing people that they are doing things, but they're not a lot because there's not much to do.
Yeah, and just to follow up further on that, you're with Indie News now, and where are your videos going up so people can watch? As you said, you were shooting some videos and such.
So we've got a YouTube channel, Indie News Now, that we're getting a lot of videos up. A lot of the live coverage we've been doing has been on TikTok, Indie News now. We've been doing live streams and updates on a lot of the specific interactions that are going on, trying to get a little bit more of the nuanced details instead of covering the sort of main things that are happening, while also doing a little commentary on things like the Emergency Act and what it means in general. So Indie News now on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter.
Yeah, and I am seeing from a commenter saying that in other streams, they're showing some areas are a little more volatile and there's arrests happening right now. That's part of it. This is spread out over quite a wide area. It's sort of little pockets of protest rather than just one central spot, isn't it?
Yeah, that started the first day that I was here. Everyone was kind of in awe and centralized. And as of the second day and the third day, it just got more and more spread out. They shut down the Confederation Park area, and there was a huge gathering there, and it's actually where the native groups were. So it was interesting that got shut down. But there's little pockets of people, usually 3 or 4 different dances, 50 plus barbecues, just cooking food and handing it out for people. And it's not just on the hill, it's sort of very, very spread out. Of course, it's cold, so people also come in and out too.
Yeah, how have you been received? I know mainstream media is not the most welcome these days down on these protests and these gatherings. As independent media, are people typically being all right with you down there?
We've been received very well. We've gotten a lot of support. People sending us over videos and footage that they were able to get. And some people are a little hesitant to jump on camera for some of the interviews, but I'd say 80 to 90% of them really want to speak and be heard, and also to have a channel where that's not going to be perverted. So we were able to get into one of the conferences, one of the branches with Vince and some of the ex-police officers and veterans were running, and they saw that it was us, and they said, "Oh, we know you guys, you're going to report it well, come on in." And New York Times was there, and they didn't answer any questions, but we got an interview with Vince that we're going to post up as well.
Great. Well, we're in some great times where we can bypass those gatekeepers of information with the mainstream and just get unfettered, straight coverage to them, as you've been doing. And as somebody else, just a commenter mentioning, watch out that apparently cops are not thrilled with all the streamers out there, so you might have issues. But as you said, so far they've been civil, so that's a good sign. Yeah. So maybe I'll let you carry on with your work down there. If you're up for it a little later in the show, I'd love to pull you in to get another update and see how it's going there. And
Sure thing. I'll keep my headphones on here and listen in, and if anything comes up, I'll flag you down. But if you want to give me a shout out, I'll be here.
Excellent. I really appreciate this, as do our viewers. We're really wondering what's going on out there. We don't want to have to rely on CBC for it.
Exactly. Thanks so much, Cory.
All right. Thanks. See you in a while, Cameron. So that reminder, that's Cameron James. He's on the ground with Indie News Now. We do have so many great independent media outlets going out there. I know Andrew Lawton's out there with True North. Rebel, of course, is always out that way. We've had people out and about at protests, but being the Western Standard, most of our resources are out here. We had somebody embedded down in the Coots protest, of course, for over a week and some, and we covered things as they broke. So we're getting the news as quickly as we can on what's happening out there in Ottawa. And it's so unique, it's I keep watching the CTV or CBC stream off to the side here. It's where I keep turning my head. It sounds similar to what Cameron's been reporting on. Large police presence. They're holding lines. Almost, though, it's more posing than action. We're not seeing them stepping in or intervening. They began the entire action by coming straight in. They seem to be coming in hot and arrested a few people. And we saw some footage a while back with windows being smashed out of a SUV so they could take the driver out of it. And I did see some footage of a family. Actually, looks like they were leaving the protest, a number of them, and they had some kids. So that's good. They got out of the way. But as it stands now, it seems more like a standoff. And as I was saying with Cameron, we don't know what's going to happen. We've never seen anything like this before. I think that's a picture of Tamara Leach there. She got arrested yesterday. One of our commenters said, I think there's a bail hearing for them this afternoon. And I imagine Dichter is with her and whatever other leaders or organizers. That's, the term that has to be used for this is organizers, because there isn't really a leader. There's not a central person. There's been a lot of, prominent people who stand out, like Tamara and some of the others, but this is a bunch of different groups and individuals acting, and that makes it very difficult for the people who want to break these protests down to take care of it. I mean, where can you target? How do you stop it? Some people might want to leave, some might want to stay. They're doing what they can, but it doesn't seem to be working out very well. And my thoughts, I wasn't sure. I thought maybe they're going to come in and try and clear it all out by the weekend. But as we can see online, as we can see from others, and we're seeing from the streams, this is just infuriating people. I mean, I suspect there's a whole lot of people who are making plans to spend their weekend now in Ottawa, and they're probably heading out that way right now. And again, not saying they're getting violent or anything, but they're going to pad the numbers. And the more people that are there, the less the police can do about it. As Cameron also pointed out, I mean, a lot of these officers, I know if people get upset with police, they see some of the stuff they're doing. Some people think they shouldn't be working at all. They're in different situations, but for the most part, and I've seen that in other protests that have gone off the rails. I've gone to them, and they've got to be pushed pretty hard usually before they get straight to the violence. As much as it sounds like the federal leadership wants them to come in with tear gas and truncheons and horses and running down protesters and dragging them out by their hair, these officers themselves don't want to do that. This is their fellow citizens. In fact, a lot of police officers, and we've seen videos of that in Alberta, BC, they've been outspoken and they're getting disciplined for it, unfortunately. But they don't want any part of cracking down on Canadians. That's not what they got into it for. And they're not in a hurry to make this into a violent confrontation, and it's good. So so far so good. They're holding the line. Now I don't want to counsel people whether they should hold the line or not, but obviously a lot are staying. So this is going to be unfolding for days. Like in Ottawa now, it's 2:00. The sun's going to be going down in 5 hours. If the police haven't moved them out now in daylight while things are all together, I don't see how they're going to be able to. Maybe the siege is going to continue a little more, where we're talking about them, blocking more fuel, blocking food, siege-wise, trying to bring them out slowly but surely. But again, these officers, I mean, they've got hundreds and hundreds, and that's the max of what they got. I was talking to Spike Cohen from the United States. He was the Libertarian vice presidential candidate down there. He brought up some interesting things. Like in Canada, we're not as much of a military type state as the United States. We don't have nearly the number of police officers per citizen that the Americans have. And this is stretching the resources of the police to the max. I mean, we have a story on westernstandardonline.com of the Vancouver police were donating or dedicating some police to come out to Ottawa to try and keep up with this. So if people keep pouring in there all weekend, the police, I mean, they can only work 12, 14 hours at a time maximum when you're standing up in this kind of shift, this kind of work. Those resources are going to be depleted. This isn't done. This isn't even close to done. And, as others have said, yeah, there's been some shoving. Apparently, some people might have been hit with the butts of guns. Like, this is still a tense situation. But I mean, if you look at, if Nico could pull up the CBC line, something that's interesting here too, when you see the police all lined up right now, they're not carrying the shields. They don't have the helmets on. Like, I've been to protests. I've attended them. Again, usually they're the ones that they're usually left-wing things. They're usually progressive things, and they can go off the rails. They're a lot more angry, and police move in a line, and it's all about intimidation. You've probably seen it on TV, and it is intimidating when you're on the ground. They'll have those shields. They'll have those helmets. They'll bang their truncheons on those shields. They'll march towards the protesters. They push you back. And right now, these police aren't even dressed for that kind of action right now. These aren't riot police squads. This is just a lot of police, and I don't think they're going to clean them out today. So now what? What do you do? Where do you go with this? Time's going to tell at this point. My guest, Jay Hill, should be in a moment, but he's not quite there yet. And we'll talk about things. I'm going to talk while things are moving along too, though, with just reminding us all, independent media, people like Cameron James is out there on the ground with his Indie News Now, and us with the Western Standard Online. So I'm going to do a little bit of self-promotion here. If you aren't a subscriber already and you're watching, please go to the westernstandardonline.com/membership. Take out a membership, or a subscription, I should say. Take out a subscription for $10 a month, $99 a year. You get full, unfettered access to our news, our opinion, our stuff as it breaks, as it goes on, and it's well worth it. You get a free trial for 2 weeks to check it out. 95% of the people, when they take out the 2-week trial, they say, yes, this is worth $10 a month to me, and they stay on board. Because, again, it's the price of an old newspaper subscription, but you're getting all of this content as it breaks, and it helps us. And then, of course, the more subscribers we've got, the more sponsors we can get, and then we can get more reporters on the ground and get things out there and cover these sorts of things as they come out. So we thank you all who've been supporting us so well so far already. And if you haven't already, please take out a subscription with us. You know, this is how we can keep bypassing that trash you see from the CBC, the CTV, Global, and all that awful stuff that I do it so you don't have to. When I eat supper, I watch those mainstream sources, and it's just because I got to see what's going on out there, but it's horrible. And the more we can replace them with these kinds of programs, the better it'll be for me and for everybody else. So thank you guys who have subscribed. And if you're watching on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, remember, subscribe and like all of those, particularly Rumble. I really want people to move on to Rumble, because on Rumble, there's the least chance of being shut down or canceled. And that seems to be what happens when we get the establishments getting messaging out there they don't want to hear. They shut it down. It's a cancel culture thing. So thank you all who've been supporting. And let's go to Jay Hill and get the view from the Maverick Party, because they've been putting releases out on a number of things. Hey, Jay, how you doing? Oh, I think you might be muted there, Jay. I'm afraid I'm not quite hearing you there, Jay. No. Okay. Let's just see here. There's one of those challenges of doing a live stream. All it takes is one button, and you can't hear what's going on. You trying to talk there, Jay? No, I'm afraid we got no sound from you right now, Jay. We'll go away from Jay for a little bit. Maybe if he wants to try signing out and back in again, we'll see if the sound can come back on for him. The Maverick Party has taken some policy stances. For one, of course, they came out with a press release, which I didn't see from any other party, strongly condemning and speaking on the actions up with the Ecoterrorists up in northern British Columbia there on the Coastal GasLink line. And as well, I mean, they've been coming out. People have asked, are they an independence group or are they not? Well, they've certainly gotten more outspoken on where they stand as far as the pursuit of Western independence is. Let's call Jay in and see. There we go. I hear you now.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right. I mean, it's going to be one of those things when this period of Zoom meetings and virtual meetings and all that stuff is over. I never want to hear people say, do you hear me now? Do you hear me now? Oh, it's going to haunt me into my dreams, into my retirement age, I'm sure.
Well, especially for fellas like me that are getting a little long in the tooth and aren't too technologically savvy, Cory.
Well, you got her up and running now, and I appreciate you coming on. Maybe I'll start with that, though. I got a press release into my inbox just before the show, actually, so I wasn't able to give it a really good read. But you guys came right out and you're addressing that Eco-Terrorist Act up in northern British Columbia.
Well, exactly, and I'd like to talk about that just for a few minutes, Cory, in the sense of the juxtaposition between what is truly an act of terrorism, where citizens' lives were in danger, and of course this ridiculousness of imposing or invoking the Emergencies Act by our Prime Minister because of bouncy castles and peaceful protests that inconvenience people in Ottawa. This situation up in northern British Columbia has been allowed to go on for months and months, and it's very clear that these individuals, they're encamped at different places along the pipeline that enables them to take part in these acts of terrorism where people's lives are in danger. I have it on good authority, for example, that when they attacked from 3 different directions on that site the other night, that it was well coordinated, it was tactical, it was, if that wasn't a terrorist act, Cory, I don't know what is. The Prime Minister has the powers to come down hard on these people. I'm told that they retreat to these basically no-go zones, these artificial temporary encampments that they have at places along the pipeline where they protest. And that's how they can get away from the authorities, from the security people and the RCMP so quickly. And they go back to these so-called no-go zones. I mean, my God, is this like the demilitarized zone in Korea or Vietnam. This is in northern British Columbia in Canada. And we can't seem to get these people under control. I was also told recently that they set off flares. Get this, they broke the windows of security vehicles and set off flares inside the vehicles while the security people inside. This is unbelievable that we have this act of terrorism in northern British Columbia, but because, I would allege, because it involves the construction of a pipeline, the federal government and our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is silent on this, while he's focused on arresting people in Ottawa for a peaceful protest.
Yeah, what a contrast we've got going on is, as Wayne McCracken said, apparently, yeah, there's footage, it sounds like, that somebody was hitting a protester with the butt of his rifle and some were being arrested. We were getting some live updates from Indie News Now with Cameron James out there. He's on the ground, and it's been remarkably peaceful, and people have been calm and so far. But this is the group. This is the group that the prime ministers keep saying are extremists. They're dangerous. They're terrible. And we've got whatever it may be, thousands of them there, and very, very little violence or anything. And then we've had this ongoing in BC for 2 years, getting increasingly violent, constantly blocking roads, knocking trees down, intimidating workers. And now it's come to this with actually attacking security. The prime minister should be doing a special release right now, but he's hiding, sucking his thumb, watching the Olympics or something.
Well, exactly, Cory. And I think that all Canadians should be deeply concerned about this juxtaposition between imposing an unnecessary Emergencies Act on peaceful protesters in Ottawa. And I might add, people that he has refused to meet with, to even negotiate, or to even try and understand what their issues are. These are Canadian citizens that are raising concerns about how this whole COVID restrictions, how they've unfolded over the last couple of years, and in particular the last month or so. And he won't meet with them. He's never, ever done anything except denigrate them, attack them, demean them with vile comments. And this from our Prime Minister, Cory. And at the same time, as you're saying, the juxtaposition that this terrorist act, once it's escalated to the point of attempted murder. Let's be very clear about this. If you break the window of a vehicle when someone's inside it and you shoot a flare in there, that you're trying to set that vehicle on fire with the individuals inside, what do you call that? I call it attempted murder. And the Prime Minister should be using all his powers there where there's a true act of terrorism.
Yeah, it's absurd. So, I mean, and just for people who aren't familiar with it, you were a member of Parliament in Ottawa for a large number of years. You survived it well, for those who can manage that much time up there. But you saw, I mean, I'm certain over that period of time, a number of protests on Parliament Hill. I mean, it's natural. Every national capital has them. Have you ever seen a response to a protest like this, though?
Never, never. I mean, Prime Minister traditionally try to head off something like this, nip it in the bud, so to speak, Cory, by meeting with the people. This Prime Minister did it with everybody imaginable that has protested, as long as it's from, shall we say, the left side of the spectrum. He has no problem even marching in some protest parades. And yet when these people travel all across the country to meet with him, and to make him aware of an issue, a serious issue that they don't feel is being properly addressed, he won't even sit down with them to hear their concerns. And instead, he lets this unfold, lets it escalate to the point that weeks later, he actually invokes the Emergencies Act to give him 100% power. And let's be clear on this, Cory. This is a prime minister that was elected by 20% of the electorate last fall. He got roughly 1/3 of the people that showed up at the polls. That's 1/3 of 60% by my addition and my math. That's about 20% support from the Canadian electorate. And now he has seized 100% of the power with the enactment of the Emergencies Act. So this is scary business. And this is all on him. He had a chance to address this early, and he has failed to do so on every front. And that this is allowed to carry on, and that the mainstream media is not reporting this accurately is of deep, deep concern to all Canadians, I believe.
Yeah, the media coverage has just been abhorrent. It's been great for alternative outlets like us with the Western Standard. Our subscribers are going up in our viewership, but it's only because people have seen the media now, the establishment media, for what they've turned into and what they are, and they're just repulsed. So hopefully, in the long run, we can do better and inform people more. And another disappointment out of this on the Hill is the NDP. I mean, the NDP of old. There's no way Jack Layton would have, for example, if we're going to bring up one of their icons, would have supported the Emergency Measures Act against protesters. I just can't see it. Even Sven Robinson, I believe you shared some time on the Hill with him, perhaps. I mean, he was a hardcore left-wing NDPer, and he's come out and said this is a disgrace. The NDP should not be supporting this imposition of what's a version of martial law in Canada. Yet Jagmeet Singh is marching in lockstep with Justin Trudeau on what I see as a tyranny.
Well, and you'd be right. I mean, as I just said, this is a prime minister with very small support, the weakest mandate ever in the history of the country, seizing 100% of the power with the help of the NDP to do that. I mean, he cannot pass anything through Parliament without the support of at least one of the other parties, as you know, Cory. I was there during 3 minorities, one of Paul Martin and 2 by Stephen Harper. And I know the difficulty that we had in negotiating with the other parties on an hour-by-hour basis to get Mr. Harper's agenda through the House of Commons. It called for huge compromise and working constantly with the other parties and their House leaders to accomplish that. And yet, Mr. Trudeau, with the weakest mandate, seems to be able to just whistle, and Jagmeet Singh comes running, and only too happy to do his bidding and support the Liberal agenda in the House of Commons, including invoking the Emergencies Act. It's absolutely unbelievable that every Canadian isn't up in arms. I was talking to a family member that has been following all the rules, doing everything over the last 2 years, and he is incensed. This latest thing has finally tipped the balance, I believe, for him and many others that have been trying to do their best. They've got vaccinated, they follow all the restrictions, they follow all the rules, and then it comes to this. And I hope that this is the turning point. I hope this is the breaking point for many Canadians. And that's why Maverick has been calling upon the Western premiers not to just talk about it, not to just oppose the imposition of the Emergencies Act, but to do something. They have to actually take action with their legislatures while they still have the power to do so.
Yeah, well, we're seeing essentially, I mean, that our system is broken. It's just not functioning the way it's supposed to. And I don't think it can be repaired. And it sounds like the Maverick Party, if I interpret this right, you guys, it's always been kind of, well, are you fully in support of independence or no? I've definitely sort of come to the line of saying, you know what, it's time to head for independence.
Well, we've always been in favor of independence. It depends on where that lands, Cory, as you know. And we see a range of it, but you have to start somewhere. The old saying that every great journey begins with one step. You have to start somewhere. And that's why I'm urging the Western premiers in the 3 prairie provinces to actually do something, to show Central Canada, to show Trudeau, we're not going to take it anymore. And so whether it's incremental steps like the Fair Deal panel here in Alberta, put forward, like our own pension plan, to emulate Quebec on so many different fronts, control of our immigration. You run down the list and eventually arrive at a nation within a nation. If it's that, or if we even decide that can no longer work, that no longer is tenable in the best interests of Westerners, then you have to go full out independence, absolutely. And I'm suggesting, Cory, that the time has to be now for people to rise up and say, we are not going to put up with this anymore.
Well, and ironically, unity can be gained if provinces will stand up and assert their autonomy, as Yea for Conservatives is kind of saying. I mean, premiers are referred to as first ministers. When it's a first ministers conference, they're supposed to be a part of the whole government. They're supposed to be the representatives of their regions. And right now, 7 out of 10 premiers oppose the imposition of the Emergencies Act right now, and Trudeau hasn't even talked to them. He's ignored them. He doesn't care what they think. What's the point of having regional leaders if their input doesn't matter in such a big issue?
Exactly. I want to make one other point just on this issue of the terrorist activity up in northern British Columbia, and that is that if people are under the illusion that somehow the Prime Minister isn't aware. I know for a fact of being a government minister with Prime Minister Harper that the Prime Minister receives a detailed briefing every morning about what's happening, not only across the nation, but around the globe. So it's not like he...
So we might have a little bit of a problem with Jay's feed. His internet's acting up. Speaking of promises from federal and provincial leaders over time, of course, better internet streams throughout Canada have been one year after year that they keep promising. That never comes about. We'll see there. Jay seems to be moving around a bit again. We'll pull him back here. Sorry, Jay, your internet kind of calved out on you. It looks a little weak there. We'll let you finish up before we move on there, though. What were you saying?
I was just going to say, or just saying, Cory, that just so people are clear, the Prime Minister receives an in-depth briefing every morning. It's not like he can say, oh, I didn't know about what was unfolding in northern British Columbia. He's invoked the Emergencies Act needlessly for the demonstrations in Ottawa. Use that act since you invoked it, Mr. Trudeau, and clamp down on this terrorism in northern BC.
Great. Well, thank you for being one strong voice. You know, we haven't had enough. I mean, even the federal Conservatives have kind of been careful right now. They're in the middle of a leadership race. You know, Poilievre has been outspoken, but they're kind of wishy-washy, I think, somewhat. They're always looking for the big brass ring. So where can we find more information on you and the Maverick Party and what you guys are up to? Because you've been pretty active lately.
Well, of course, we're on social media on virtually every platform, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it. We have our own website that we post our positions on at maverickparty.ca. And I would just say that the problems you just mentioned with the Conservative Party are because they are a national party and they always have to stop short of being representative of the concerns of Western Canadians because they always have to bear in mind the majority of votes are in Central and Eastern Canada.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining me again, Jay. It's always good talking with you, and keep up the good fight out there.
Thank you. You as well, Cory. Thank you so much for the coverage that you're giving Canadians so that people like my son-in-law have someplace to go and get some accurate information of what is happening.
Great. Thanks, Jay. I'll probably check in with Cameron again in a moment or two, but I just want to speak quickly of our other sponsor since we're at it. Speaking of freedoms, and that is the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Their URL is cssa-cila.org. Their name kind of says it all. You know, they stand up for your right and ability to own and enjoy and transfer firearms legally, safely, and correctly, which is what most of us do. And we're in this crazed world. These are the guys that help us keep broadcasting, do things like that. Check them out. They got legal challenges on your behalf as firearm owners. They need your help, though. I mean, if you don't join them, they can't support you. So get on there, Canada Shooting Sports Association. Check it out. Take out a membership with them. Derek has a membership. Others have memberships. That's how they can support and keep standing up for your rights, because our rights are terribly under threat right now, as we're seeing in Ottawa as we speak. So let's bring Cameron in there. He seems to be right in the middle of the mix of everything in Ottawa, out in the cold. There we go. Hey, Cameron, how's it going now?
Pretty well. It looks like the police here, the Quebec police are the ones in the riot gear, the SQP, and they are sort of inching up forward. They take sort of a foot every couple of minutes or so, and it seems like they're trying to sort of get around one vehicle at a time to make sure that they have sort of control over them is kind of what I'm seeing, although, of course, I don't know what they're thinking. And there's police from a number of jurisdictions. Again, the Quebec police are the ones they bust in last night. They brought big buses of the Quebec police in last night, and they're the ones in the riot gear on the front lines. They just inched another foot and got around this truck here, as you can forming a line around it.
Okay, so I guess they're taking it vehicle by vehicle, as you said. As the protesters get backed up then by these riot police, is there somewhere for them to go, or is this going to press them against a wall here?
Well, down the other way, Wellington is pretty clear. So, there's about 500 meters before you get to the main area on the hill. And then streets that are going south away from the hill are all open. The police are not letting vehicles in, but they are letting people walk in. And the corralling doesn't seem to be a cornering process at all yet.
Okay, because that's just a concern, you know. I mean, that's when a protest can get dangerous. I mean, if police are pushing and pushing and there's nowhere else for people to consider backing up, well, that's when you're going to get a conflict eventually. So no indications of any violence yet or anything like that.
No, it looks pretty good so far. They're just inching forward. They've got a couple guys with their fingers on the triggers of some tear gas guns, but I really don't foresee them using those for any reason. It's pretty calm. The cops are pretty calm. They're pushing against some people as they inch forward, but there isn't much in the way of tussling or anything like that.
Well, that's good to hear. And I don't know if you heard much of my other interview. I was talking to Jay Hill, and he was a member of Parliament for a long time. And, you know, he saw a lot of protests come and go. And again, nobody's ever seen anything quite like this.
Yeah, this is unprecedented, I guess, as you guys were saying, in a number of different ways. Especially, of course, the media coverage wherein they're saying that there's all sorts of violence here and aggressive acts, and it's all bigots. Of course, they had those two. Most people believe they were plants because they weren't part of the protest at all, with some hateful flags. But everyone here has been really respectful and beautiful, and actually have had more violence against them, slashed tires, and a couple people taking things at people and tussling with people. So I don't see it escalating really, although they're just doing a push of the line. It looks like advance here. As you can see behind me.
Yeah, and I mean, this is good to see. It undercuts, you know, that push by the Prime Minister saying that he needed the Emergencies Act, that he needed to move in. I hate to say it, and I hope they aren't that cold, but I'm sure a few strategists would almost hope there'd be some outbursts so they can justify what they've done so far, and they're not getting it.
Yeah, we kind of ran into a couple situations like that, and a lot of the guys who are involved heavily with the protests are sort of equipped to dismantle those situations. And I think we were able to sort of de-escalate some situations too. So a lot of the protesters are working really hard to make sure that those kind of agitators and situations don't come up.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. Like, we had video, as you said, there were some repugnant flags that had gone around. One video showed protesters themselves got up and said, "Hey, you get out of here. You're not part of us. We want no part of that. You leave." And so right now the protesters are sort of self-governing against people who want to get perhaps too physical or too aggressive in this case right now.
100%. And there's also a lot of messages going around through what is a really powerful grapevine, and people saying, listen, don't engage them. If you do want to talk to someone who's a counter-protester, have a nice conversation. Just listen to them, hear what they have to say. Went down and talked to some of the counter-protesters originally complaining about the horns, and listened respectfully. And I think the truckers actually listened and chilled out on the horns. And then the cops tried to play it off as if it was their strong-arming that did it. But I think it was a real respect for the citizens of the city, you know.
Well, and something else that had happened was the mayor had approached protesters in a way, and the mayor wasn't very supportive of them, but it sounds like they reasoned out a deal at least to say, can you at least, you know, ease off on the residential neighborhoods and take some pressure off. And it showed again, hey, they could be reasoned with. They moved. There wasn't a problem. The only one who seems intractable, unfortunately, is our Prime Minister.
Yeah, and he's been stoking tensions here, totally unnecessary. And it's like, some people are saying, what is he doing? Is he trying to start a civil war? Is he trying to just disrupt the country? And it's just shameful, really. But you know, the representation here shows that all types of Canadians are all standing with this and want unity without needing to have uniformity, without needing to sort of follow anyone's particular dictate, right?
Yeah, it's not ideologically driven, you know. I mean, they've tried to paint it that way. They try to say, oh, it's this particular group or that. But I saw that in demonstrations in Calgary, too. There's people from all over the political spectrum, or most impressively, people who aren't political whatsoever. They've just had enough, and they feel they got to do something.
Families, and we're doing a lot of interviews, and the different messages for why people want to be here are very diverse, but they all surround a sense of freedom and a sense of respecting every Canadian's right. There's plenty of people here who are vaccinated who say, you know, I respect the vaccines, but I want people to be able to choose their own choices and not force things upon people. And I think more and more of those people are joining the protests and seeing that there is just love and compassion here, and it's not a thing. And then they go and they tell their friends, look, the narrative in the media is lying, kind of right, and that should concern us all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people are seeing through it, and I appreciate you being on the ground again. The narrative has just been so bad. So if something happens, it's documented. We've got people there saying, no, that's not what you're framing. That's not what happened. It's so important. I do want to ask, though, it's a sensitive subject, but have you seen much for children around there? Like, that is a concern some people have.
I mean, yeah, every day there's usually families out bringing their children. They want their children to be part of it. Their children want to be part of it because they do believe that there is something at the essence of being a Canadian and being a free human being in the world that they would like to show their kids and share the joy and the hope that everybody here is really just passing out. It's just positive message. So none of the kids have ever been in danger. There's not very many here now, which is I think maybe a better thing. A lot of people were complaining about that, and now that they have some of the weapons out, I'm kind of glad that there are less children around.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying. Just like not so much the children in general, but just at this moment, because unfortunately things could change quickly, and a child could get trampled or tear gas. I don't know if you've ever been tear gassed, but I have. It's horrible. I mean, it sucks the breath out of your lungs, and for a small child, it could be very dangerous. So, we just want to make sure nobody gets hurt.
Yeah, it's exactly what the orders are down here. It just seems like they're advancing, and they're not really, they have the arsenal at the ready. But I don't get the feeling they're looking to use it really.
Have you seen, you said they're taking kind of vehicle by vehicle, have you seen any signs of heavy-duty tow trucks? Some footage had gone out earlier from Andrew Lawton showing police escorting tow trucks out to the area, and it takes a specialized truck to move those trucks. Any indication they're trying to move any vehicles yet?
Yeah, we saw those vehicles as well earlier. They had police logos over the company logos. I mean, there are still hundreds of trucks here, so they might be able to move one or two. The snow's still kind of on the ground. It's plowed out in a lot of areas, but overall, I don't know how much they're going to be able to move in terms of trucks. But nothing seems to be moving quite yet.
Okay, some chanting going on over there. It's getting a little lively.
There was a really great chant, stand with us, stand with us. That was going on for a while you guys were talking.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's good. It's better than that hey, hey, ho, ho at every demonstration. I mean, I understand it's a standby, but boy, it gets tiresome sometimes. Well, that's great. Well, I'm going to let you go. I really appreciate these check-ins. And maybe, again, if something breaks, let me know. We'll bring you right back in. I appreciate those feet on the ground and letting people know what's going on out that way as it breaks. I hope you stay safe. And just to remind everybody, that's Cameron James with Indie News Now. You guys are on TikTok and YouTube. Really appreciate this. So I hope we talk again soon, and just send me a text and let me know if there's something you feel needs to break. We'll get it out there because this is really important.
Yes, thanks very much, Cory. You have a great day.
All right, thanks. You're doing a great job. So yeah, this is turning points that we see throughout of all of this, and one of which is independent media. It's coming out. People are giving up on the old mainstream, the standbys, the establishment media. That's the term, or the legacy media. And it's made a difference. These protests wouldn't be able to happen like this. They wouldn't be able to be this peaceful. They wouldn't be able to make this messaging if we were constantly getting that filtered, biased, controlled media. As you can see, Cameron's on the ground. He's just shooting and reporting on what he sees. And I could tell if the protesters were getting unruly and uncontrolled, he'd be reporting on that as well. He's just there to document what's going on. He's not there to give a slant or a side. But unfortunately, our legacy media, on the other hand, and as we've seen, have constantly seemed to have almost been the message piece for the prime minister when it comes out with these things. And they've definitely got their own agenda, and we've got to cut through that. It is so important. So it's great having Cameron there. I'm glad he dedicated some time to us today so we could see that. And the CBC, we've been showing some of that. Their streaming coverage. They got cameras. It's funny. if you look at the CBC stream, these are cameras that are distant from the protests. They're always a ways away and shooting in with a zoom lens because they are not being well received by people on the ground. And it's because they've given such crap coverage. I don't want to see reporters shoved around or abused at these sites. But I don't want if people refuse to talk to them. You're not going to get a fair shake out of most of them. I've said before that there's still some good journalists out there in the legacy media. They got to pay bills or whatnot. I'm sure they probably feel dirty at the end of the day with some of the stuff they put out there. But, take it easy on some of them. Hey, eventually the good ones will come out to good outlets like ours. I mean, our news editor, Dave Naylor, is fantastic and covers stuff. And of course, he put in decades with the Calgary Sun, which is mainstream. Like, there's still good guys and women out there. And let's keep pulling them away from there and leave the legacy media to the crappy reporters that they have gathered and the rest. But guys like James or Cameron James can get right in on the ground in the protest because they respect independent media out there. And I'm looking at that footage from CBC. It looks like they've been shoveling up barriers. So they're putting snow barriers up around the trucks to make it more difficult for tow trucks to come in. It was interesting listening to Cameron saying that the tow trucks that he saw coming out there had the police logo put over top of their company logo because, of course, the companies could be seeing some backlash. I mean, you got to remember who operates in we're not talking about the little tow trucks, guys. This isn't AMA we're talking about here. This is heavy duty tow trucks. It's specialized equipment made for moving heavy equipment. I'm sorry, I just see from Yay for Conservatives said that Trans Mountain was just canceled by the feds. And I know that's a social media account that's prominent and been out there big on Facebook and things like that. Can you expand a little bit on that? Trans Mountain has been canceled. That's kind of out of the blue here on us. I haven't heard anything about this yet, but boy, what an insane thing to break and happen if that's the case right now in the middle of all of this. Either way, we see that trucker, before I get more news on that, backing in, moving into where they've been piling all the snow there. These tow trucks, and as Cameron had told us, there are hundreds of trucks down there. Even if they push the people back, how are they going to move all of these vehicles? And I remember my air brakes course. I probably couldn't pass the test again at this point, but I did have to take it. And you can do things with those brakes, caging and so on, those air brakes, and they will lock, and those trucks are not going to move easily. So the logistics of this whole thing. So for all of and we saw it in social media, some of these control-minded people who are celebrating the police moving in and saying it's over, it's done, they're going to clean out Ottawa, and we can maintain these mandates forever. Guys, logistically, as we're seeing now, it's not even nearly as easy as you think it is or as you hope it might be. It is a massive endeavor. And again, it's a delicate endeavor. Most police, as I said earlier, don't want to get violent. They don't want this to fall apart and have people hurt. They don't want to hit them over the head. I mean, I'm sure there's a psychopath or two among them. There always is with a number of people. But so far, it's been remarkably peaceful. And this isn't stopping. Obviously, these guys are in for the weekend. I can't see them cleaning this up before the weekend. I was wondering this morning when they started moving, okay, are they going to come in en masse, and are they going to have this flushed out before all the people can show up from all around for another weekend of protests? And obviously that's not going to be the case. They are not going to get these guys out of there. And this protests are going on and on. Trudeau's emergency powers are not serving him. These people are devoted, going after people's bank accounts, shaming them in the works, not working. These trucks, as we said, there's some that came in for these heavy duty tow trucks. These private companies, they're truckers. They support this group, and literally they've made it illegal to say no. But and Yay for Conservatives is saying it's from BNN, saying the Trans Mountain's been canceled. We'll certainly work on that if we hear more about it. Getting near the end of the broadcast. TMX for Damien asking us, the Trans Mountain pipeline. That's the one that the government's regulated to the point of. Okay, here we go. According to the Yay for Conservatives, the cost of building has nearly doubled, and the timeline for completing it is expanded. In a release Friday afternoon, they said the estimated cost has climbed to $21 billion from the previous estimate of $12.6 billion. Yeah, we knew about all that, but canceling it, guys, as others are saying, if that's what's going on, and with this mess in Ottawa and everything else, it's time for the West to go. I've been saying that for quite some time. And if they've actually shut that thing down, I mean, that thing's mostly buried. We've been working on this for years, and to stop it at this point. But again, our prime minister is an abject imbecile. So I'm just going to pop on the camera one more time before the end here. Nico's saying we got something going on there. So we'll pull him in. Cameron, what we got going on?
With one of the truckers parked. There's 2 trucks parked right here. We were talking to another trucker who didn't want to come on, but we've got Sebastian here, right?
Hey, Sebastian.
Hi, how are you?
Very good. Hope you guys are all doing all right there out in Ottawa. You're making history.
I mean, so far I'm doing pretty well. I cannot hear you properly, but
yeah, no, it's difficult with the live stream. So are you camped out there, or are you just there for the day, or have you been there for a while now?
well, I've actually had my truck parked here for, I think it was 2 weeks and 4 days to be exact. So I've been here for a while, yeah.
Okay, and I imagine you're still determined to stay no matter what the government is doing at you this time, eh?
Well, so far I'm not too sure. I think if they clear the snow in front of me, I might drive my truck and go relocate somewhere to avoid getting towed and arrested. But we'll have to see what's going to happen in the next few hours. And yeah.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I guess you must be getting fairly tired after this long. I mean, what would it take to make you want to leave, though? What do you want to see happen to bring this to an end?
If they can lift all the mandates all across Canada and give us our freedom back, then I'll be happy. But for now, I'm willing to stay. I don't know what's going to happen in the next few hours, but we'll have to see.
These are crazy times. I hope you guys manage to stay safe and keep peaceful as you have so far. I appreciate that you guys have protested so effectively so far.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
All right. No, thank you.
Thanks to you.
All right. Yeah, thanks for bringing that in, Cameron. It's good to hear the voice of somebody. Just hear that, again, it's not a crazy person. It's not an extremist. It's just a dedicated soul who just wants these mandates gone.
And that's really it. Everyone we've talked to here is got the that they've been slandered. There's hateful things going on here because, of course, very much the opposite of that.
Yeah, I think your mic has got a little loose there. I couldn't quite hear that last little bit.
Yeah, no. Everyone we've talked to has kind of been of a similar sentiment where they're willing to stay and they want it to be peaceful. So.
Great. Well, thank you very much for keeping us up to date and for those interviews. And we'll be watching you very closely and perhaps checking in with you again if you got something coming. So,
excellent.
All right. Stay warm, stay safe, and keep up doing that good work. Cameron James, it's of Indie News Now. Look them up, guys. He's reporting. He's on the ground. I'm certain he's going to be there for a while and have more stuff going on to their site on YouTube and other areas. So we're getting near the end of the show, and I really want to get out there and follow up and see what the heck's going on with the Trans Mountain Pipeline. Of course, I could see that, when the government wants to do something, by the way, if you're familiar with politics, they will drop their worst releases just before a long weekend because they're hoping people forget it. And I mean, this is a gift for them to drop the release on the Friday when we're in the midst of protests and police actions and things going on across the country, and hope people don't realize that they just pulled the rug out from under us on this Trans Mountain Pipeline, if that's the case. But Calvin Goulet-Jones is saying it's not canceled. So see, there's some of the problems when we get live stuff and social media stuff. So I won't say anything's been canceled until we've got some confirmation on things. The prices are escalating. I know I saw some, of course, environmental groups demanding it be canceled because the prices are going up, but they're not exactly business-minded souls. So for now, we'll stick to the coverage of everything else. We'll check into the rest of the things. Go to the westernstandardonline.com. If it is canceled, we'll certainly have news on that right away. And if it isn't, well, there won't be anything on it. It's just another rumor, but there'll probably be some reporting on the cost and expenses that have been shot up in the reports that are coming out. Because you know what? Just get the bloody thing in the ground. It should have been done years ago, you fools. Meanwhile, the world's in an energy crisis. So next week on Tuesday, and I mean, who knows? We might be breaking in with some live things. So if you haven't subscribed on on YouTube, on Facebook, on Rumble, subscribe. And that way you'll get an alert if we break in on anything breaking. It'll pop up and you'll see they are live and covering it. Just like when the Coots, when everything was opening up down there and James was on the ground, people got the alert and they could see it live. So otherwise, next week on Tuesday, I'll be back at 11:30 as with every other day. And we're going to have the Tea Party, one of the Tea Party founders, Michael Johns, on to talk. And talk about political organizing. And he was a speechwriter for Donald Trump, I believe. He's an interesting gentleman, if nothing else to speak with. And we're going to have a chat with him. And we're going to talk with Western Standard columnist Andrew Allison, who has been, he's a philosophy major in Calgary, a PhD candidate. And he's had some serious concerns, and he's written on the Emergencies Act and the implications of it. So he'll be coming in studio to talk, and we'll have, of course, a number of great guests and coverage throughout the week and updated news stories all weekend. Thank you all for tuning in today, guys. Have a good one, and I'll see you all on Tuesday, if not before.
Back it up! Let them see! Disgrace! Disgrace! No right! I'm on!